I learned an important lesson over the past 3 years, and it's that great business thinker Peter Drucker was right, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. In fact, I came this close to losing my entire company during the pandemic until I decided to stop focusing so much on our strategy, to look inward, and to start focusing on our culture. Well, over the last few years, we not only saved the company, but we stumbled upon what we think are 3 of the most critical pillars for building healthy, high-performance distributed teams. And this is important for all of us. Let me tell you the story. It was March of 2020, and everything was going great. It was going to be such a good year. My team was on campus at Harvard building a machine learning software to transform all of education. And then you know what happened next. A pandemic was declared, Harvard kicked everyone off campus, and my team spread out all over Boston and the world more broadly. And overnight, the team with a culture that I had worked so hard to build in a particular way, we became just another one of those Zoom and Slack teams like thousands of others. And it was okay for a little while, but over time, the team that I'd worked so hard to recruit and build, it felt like we were drifting apart. The fabric of our team was changing. We were sending text chats and having video calls, yes, but there was no real team connection. And I think for anyone in here who's been part of a Zoom and Slack team before, you know what I'm talking about, just intuitively. Something just doesn't feel right. And so I racked my brain for months for the times in my life that I felt the most connected to people, despite being across long distances. And one memory kept coming back to me over and over and over again. Now, this is going to sound pretty nerdy, but it was when I used to play World of Warcraft. Wow, 18 years ago. God, I met so many of my best friends in that world that Blizzard created. I met Dan, the guy who helped me get into medical school. I met Mark, our founding CTO at SoWork. I met one of our product people and one of our designers. It was crazy. I got so close to these people, and despite us being on 3 different continents at the time and with no video, no audio, without any of the tools that we have today, we just had our game world and our avatars. But I just knew there had to be some secret key in there. We got inspired by this realization, and we decided to go out on a limb and build a WoW Lite. It's like WoW, but for our team to work from. We'd first build a world to bring us back together again. And then we'd layer on the things we needed for the business side so we could work effectively as a team. Things like video and audio, privacy, and so on. We put our heads down, and we got to work building what we thought was just going to be a virtual office for our team. But when we launched it, well, the feeling of being in a world together blew us away. We were no longer just little video tiles anymore. We were real game versions of ourselves. We could see each other in the world. We could come together for spontaneous meetings in the meeting rooms or at the water cooler. We could eat together in the kitchen. We could even dance with each other. All we had to do was just walk up to each other, and we'd automatically connect. It felt like we were together, even though we weren't together. This was a light bulb moment, a transformative insight for us. Within a couple of weeks of working out of our World of Workcraft, we started feeling more connected, more productive, more creative, more empowered. We weren't just a group of disengaged people anymore. We were a real team again. And so we got extremely curious. Was there something deeper here that we needed to explore? Why did we feel this way? And further, every one of our friends that we brought in wanted to set up their own offices in our world as well. Why? What were we doing for them? And how? We decided to completely pivot our old company to focus on this team connection problem. And we changed our name to SoWork, Social Online Work. We started as a team just looking for real human connection across long distances. But now, 3 years later, we think we've stumbled upon 3 of the most critical pillars for building healthy, high-performance teams in our distributed post-COVID world. Okay, so what are these 3 pillars? What have we learned that we can share? Well, the first pillar is you need a place to be together with your team. You need presence. But it turns out that presence doesn't actually have to be physical. It just has to be human. From our research with teams, the most common sentiment that we hear is that teams used to feel alone and disconnected. But now, they don't anymore. They say they feel like they have a home again, where both they and their companies can express themselves. The pandemic showed us how detrimental loneliness and isolation could be for teams and for people alike. And we didn't need a pandemic to tell us this. We act this every day. We go to cafes and libraries even though we don't know anybody there. We go to co-working spaces to work around strangers because we're a social species. And when we worked in the real life office, a bunch of things came for free that we just never had to think about. The real life office gave us a shared place to be together. And that place and what we got from it, well, it turns out it's significantly more important than any of us realized. Without a place for your team, you can't fulfill that deep-seated human urge to be around your tribe. And we discovered that we can create this place digitally. It doesn't have to be in real life. We found that teams just want to be around each other to share communal energy so they can use it to push their work forward better. The second pillar is that all of those spontaneous middle moments, the between meetings, the water cooler conversations, yeah, those are really, really important. And turns out even those don't have to be physical. In a recent Harvard Business School study, assistant professor Ashley Willens and her team discovered that the loss of these middle moments when we all switched from in-person to Zoom and Slack severely stunted organizational innovation. Every day, even now, meetings are being derailed because employees just want to be able to talk to each other, to make up for all those lost office bump-ins. Turns out, though, you don't need a physical place for these to happen. A digital place works too. Any place that allows us to be our own natural selves. We heard about these same problems in our research, and we were able to bring back these middle moments for teams, restoring that pulse of innovation and connection. And the third thing we learned is that these first 2 pillars that we talked about, having a place and your spontaneous middle moments, well, these actually create the right environment for your culture to even exist. Think about it. Culture isn't a line item. It isn't a block in the calendar or something you can buy. It exists between everything. There's no magic formula for creating great culture, but you do have to create the right environment. Remember, your culture is how your company makes decisions when you're not there. And if you're just sending text chats and having video calls, you're always not there. How can you create a culture if you don't have a central place for your team to drink that culture in and use it to push their work forward? You can't. So what we discovered with teams is that an environment where your team can have presence with each other, and where they can have their seamless middle moments. Well, that'll give you your best shot at creating a distributed team culture that you can be proud of. There's one last realization we had, and this is probably the most important. Previously, these pillars, these fundamental building blocks, they were inherently tied to being in person. We thought they were impossible to replicate digitally. But we solved that. And we solved it by reverse engineering why I felt how I felt playing World of Warcraft with my friends. We were together, doing something that mattered to us. It wasn't work, per se, but it had all the core components needed to build a culture capable of accomplishing great things. So when you give your remote team those same core components, turns out they can also build the type of culture that Drucker was talking about. And not only will it not go away when the next pandemic comes, but imagine what else you can do when your office is digital and not physical. Imagine a world where your office crunches numbers, collects data, runs automations, talks to customers, answers questions, connects you with your teammates, and makes suggestions for how you might improve your team bonding and productivity. Imagine downloading an update that applies the world's best business school practices to your company instantly. Ask yourself, what would life be like if you could take your office around the world with you in your pocket without losing what makes in-person special? How much more of your life could you live? How much more time could you spend in places that energize you? How much more often would you see your loved ones? All of this is possible, and it's coming sooner than you might think. So it might sound bold, but we think that we can fundamentally reshape how work happens by shifting where work happens. And that is an idea worth spreading. Thank you.